I haven't been camping alone since the summer of 2018, at least. Before that, I thought nothing could scare me in the woods, just the trees, the wind, and the silence. But there are different kinds of silence, and there's a kind of silence that makes you feel like something is breathing on the back of your neck, even though you can't see anyone. I was 27 years old at the time, and I'd just broken up with my girlfriend of 3 years. I wasn't good at dealing with people, and the silence between two people living together was scarier than the night in the woods. I took a week off, drove up north to Idaho, and chose Elk River National Forest. They said it was at its best in August. No rain, little fog, and the stream water was so cold and clear you could see the rocks at the bottom. The perfect place to forget everything. I thought so. I left the city early in the morning, carrying a tent, a sleeping bag, some dry food, a notebook, and an old camera I'd bought at a flea market. The road leading into Elk River was longer than I expected. Turning from the freeway, it was just a winding strip of land between tall, dense pine trees. The light shining through the leaves was a blinding yellow. I had to stop a few times, not because I was tired, but because I was afraid I would fall asleep to the steady hum of the engine while the road seemed to stretch on forever. When I arrived, it was just after 5 p.m. There was no one to greet me, no gate. Just a rotten wooden sign with faded letters, Elk River Camp Zone. Use at your own risk. I laughed. The risk here must have been bears or mosquitoes. I hadn't expected things to be quieter and closer. The campground was divided into 4 zones, A, B, C, D. I drove through each zone, only seeing a silver SUV parked in Zone B. The rest were empty. I chose Zone A, which was close to the stream and hidden behind a row of tall maple trees. The air was cool, the scent of pine resin and damp earth mixed together. I pitched the tent, made a fire, and roasted some ham I'd brought. As I sat down to eat, I heard the sound of water trickling from the stream, and someone talking in the distance, not sure where, but echoing steadily. I thought it was the wind. Around 8 o'clock, the light faded as quickly as if someone had pulled the plug on the world. The sun had set behind the mountain, and everything was suddenly dark. I turned on my flashlight, shone it around, and then turned it off. I liked looking at the fire better. The smell of smoke, the smell of burning resin, the tiny crackling sound, all of it made me feel small but safe, at least for the moment. I slept with the fire burning. I didn't know when it would die down. I only remember waking at 2:17 a.m. Not because of the noise, but because of the silence. Total silence. No running water, no wind, no insects. It was as if someone had turned off a natural switch. I lay still in my sleeping bag, holding my breath. My ears began to pick up each heartbeat. Then, in the silence, I heard the sound of gravel being compressed under someone's feet. A small rustle, then silence. Another, closer. I froze. My hand tightened on the flashlight. When the noise stopped, I took a deep breath, pulling the tent zipper so slowly that it was almost silent. I turned on the flashlight, shining it through the darkness. The light fell on the damp canvas, reflecting the faint shadows of the trees. No one could be seen. But in the moment I turned the flashlight back, I heard a soft, short, sharp breath, just outside the tent fabric, to the right. It lasted exactly 3 seconds, then disappeared. I turned the flashlight on, pulled the zipper open, and stepped outside. The night was pitch black, the ground was covered with fog, the flashlight could only shine a few meters. There was nothing but the sound of my own breathing. I walked around the tent, checking the straps, and I noticed that one of the ropes in the back had been untied, coiled up, and placed neatly beside the stake. No one does that unless they want you to know they were there. I rekindled the fire, added more wood, and sat watching until morning. I wasn't terribly scared, just strangely cold and alert. The next morning, I woke early. The sun was rising through the mist, casting a pale yellow light on the surface of the stream. Everything looked so peaceful that I almost convinced myself that the night had been a hallucination, maybe a wild animal, or the wind had loosened the rope. I washed my face in the stream, the water numbingly cold. When I returned, my folding chair had been moved, about 5 meters away from the tent, facing the opposite direction. There were traces of gravel at the foot of the chair. I stood still, my heart starting to pound again. Maybe I had moved it and forgotten, I told myself. But deep down, I knew I wasn't mistaken. In the afternoon, it started to rain. I packed up some things, preparing to leave early the next day. At 9:50 p.m., while sitting in the tent reading, I saw the headlights of a car sweep through the forest from the direction of the road leading in. I breathed a sigh of relief. Someone was coming, which meant I was no longer alone. I turned off the flashlight and went out to look. The car stopped in an empty lot about 100 meters away from me. The headlights were off, but the interior lights were still on. I saw a figure sitting in the driver's seat, head tilted slightly. 1 minute, 2 minutes, no one came out. I called out, "Hello, are you new here?" No answer, just the sound of rain falling steadily on the roof. I called again, and it was still silent. I went back into the tent, deciding to ignore them. Maybe they were resting, but I couldn't sleep that night. Every time the wind changed direction, I saw the light from the other car flash through the trees as if someone was still sitting there, looking out. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. No sound of the car, no light. I went outside. The clearing was empty, as if no one had ever been there. I was about to pack up when I saw a small object placed right in front of the tent door. A flat, smooth stone with 3 parallel marks on its surface, shallow but clear and fresh stone dust. I picked it up. It was cold. I didn't linger. I folded the tent, put everything in the car, and left in the light rain. As I drove past the clearing the night before, the silver SUV I'd seen the first day was there again. The door was ajar. I slowed down, glanced over. The driver's seat was empty. The windshield was covered in small, muddy handprints, both inside and out. I didn't stop. I sped up, my heart pounding like a drum. About 20 minutes later, I arrived at the ranger station. The morning shift was an old man with gray hair and a beard named Sanders. I briefly told him what had happened, my voice still trembling slightly. He listened, looked at me, and said, "No one has registered in Area B this week. If they have a car, they must be hunters. But you should leave soon. Elk River is not a good place to be alone." I asked again, half jokingly, "Because of bears?" He just looked at me, was silent for a long time, and then said softly, "Last year, 2 students came camping, also near Area A. They disappeared. We only found their car and a tent with the ropes untied." That made me stiffen. I nodded my thanks and left. When I got home, I felt relieved. Everything in the car was the same. I thought I'd left all my fears in the woods. But when I opened the trunk to put my things away, between my sleeping bag and the camp stove, I found a flat, smooth rock with 3 parallel notches. It was exactly like the one I'd left in Elk River. I remember throwing it into the stream. I stood still, listening to the wind on the porch, and in that moment, I knew that some things don't have to chase you, they just need to touch you, and they'll stay. Now, whenever I pass through Idaho, I look toward the Elk River woods. During the day, it's picturesque. Sunlight filtering through leaves, sparkling streams, mist on the hilltops. But if you stop and listen, really closely, you'll hear something different from other woods, something still there, waiting for someone to come and stay another night. And I know, I'll never do that again. I thought I knew what it was like to be alone in the woods until that night at Glacier Point. When you're lying in your tent, listening to the rain outside, and realizing someone or something is tapping on the canvas behind your head, you know how heavy the silence can be. It was 2019. I was with 2 friends, Mark and Daniel. All 3 of us loved hiking. We chose Glacier Point, Montana, because we wanted to avoid the crowds. It was an unpopular area, with little foot traffic, but it had trails that led deep into the mountains. The plan was to hike for 3 days, 2 nights, and then loop around to Coldwater Lake. We were fully prepared. Maps, dry food, GPS, tent, knives, and walkie-talkies. Everything was fine, at least until the sky started to darken on the second day. That morning was so beautiful that it seemed like nothing could go wrong. The air was cool. The sun was a pale yellow. We crossed the stream, took some pictures, laughed. Mark was an optimistic type, always talking loudly. Daniel was taciturn, but good at observing. He was a former soldier, so everything had to be precise for him. Distance, wind direction, campsite. Thanks to Daniel, we chose a flat area near the cliff, overlooking the valley. There was no one around, no phone signal, just the forest and the wind. In the afternoon, the clouds rolled in. Daniel lit the fire, and I set up the tent. Our tent was a 3-person one, but I brought a small one. I like to sleep alone. That night, when the wind started to pick up, we sat around the fire eating canned food and drinking instant coffee. Mark told old stories from school, his voice echoing through the forest. Daniel told us to lower our voices, afraid of disturbing the animals. Mark laughed. "There's no one here but us." That sentence, I still remember it clearly. At around 10 o'clock, I crawled into my tent. The rain began to fall, sporadically. The wind whistled through the rocks, like someone was whistling. I turned on the flashlight and read my notebook for a while, then slept. I woke up around 2:40 a.m. At first I thought it was the cold. Then I became aware of a light tapping sound, tap, tap, tap right behind me, outside the tent. I held my breath. It stopped. I turned around, listening. Then it started again, clearer this time, 3 regular beats, like someone was tapping the fabric with their fingertips. No answer, just the steady drip of rain. I turned on the flashlight, shone it around nothing. The shadows of trees were faintly visible on the fabric, swaying in the wind. I moved out of the sleeping bag, intending to unzip it to see. Just then, the tapping started again, but in a different place at the foot of the tent. 3 beats, slowly, precisely. I jumped up, unlocked the door, and shone my flashlight outside. No one, no new footprints. Only rainwater on the ground, reflecting the light. I stood still for a long time, listening to my own heartbeat. Finally, I told myself it must be just a branch being hit by the wind. I locked the tent, lay down, and pulled my sleeping bag up to my neck. I couldn't sleep anymore. The next morning, Mark complained of insomnia. Daniel looked tired. He said he heard strange noises last night, like footsteps, around the camp. I told him about the tapping. Mark laughed and said, maybe squirrels or curious bear cubs? Daniel didn't laugh. He looked at me for a long time, then asked quietly, are you sure it was tapping, not scratching? I said, knock, 3 times, regularly. He just nodded. He didn't say anything more. We planned to leave that day, but the heavy rain made the road slippery. Daniel said to wait another night. I didn't like the idea, but camping in the rain was more dangerous, so we stayed. The wind was strong in the afternoon. The trees were swaying. I sat in the tent and wrote a few lines in my notebook. If I go back tomorrow, I will never sleep in the woods again. At night, the fire was barely burning. The rain was falling steadily. Daniel checked the radios. They were all working. The frequency was good. I went to bed early, trying to sleep. Around midnight, I woke up again. No knocking, no rain, only a dim light coming through the tent fabric like someone was shining a flashlight from afar. I crawled out and looked through the crack. In the direction of Mark and Daniel's tent, the flashlight was moving, slowly, swaying. I thought they must have gotten up to go to the bathroom. But the light didn't go far, just hovering around the tent, then towards me. I pulled the zipper and stuck my head out. No one. The light was off. The cold wind blew across my face, carrying the smell of damp smoke and earth. I turned back in. Before I could zip up, the knocking sounded again, this time from the left. Knock, knock, knock. 3 beats. I said loudly, Daniel, stop it. Silence. My hands trembled. I turned on the light, shone it through. Nothing but a thin curtain of rain, but on the ground, there were footprints. Round, clear, deep, smaller than my own. Just one, right next to the tent. I didn't sleep anymore. I sat until morning. When it was light, I went over to call Mark and Daniel. Their tent was wide open. Their belongings were scattered. I called. No one answered. I checked around. No new shoe prints, just wet ground. Daniel's radio was still on. The signal was still strong, but no one spoke. I walked around about 200 meters and saw them, or rather, saw the tracks. 2 sets of 3 stones, arranged in a triangle, right at the edge of the cliff. Below is a void hundreds of meters deep. I shouted. The echoes flew away, then disappeared. I left camp immediately. The rain followed me all the way down the mountain. I met the rangers at 9 a.m. The next morning, they organized a search party. I answered all the questions, over and over again, until I was numb. 3 days later, they found Daniel's backpack, tangled in a tree branch more than 2 kilometers from camp. Nothing else. No Mark, no Daniel. No one knew which direction they went. The newspapers called it missing in action. I never called it that. To me, everything was much clearer and more terrifying. A week later, I was back home, carrying my bag. I tried to live normally, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the click, 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 steady, slow, unhurried. Sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night to see the phone's notification light flash exactly 3 times, as if someone was checking to see if I was still there. A month later, the police called me in to pick up my things. It contained my notebook. The last page, the one where I had written, if I go back tomorrow, I will never sleep in the woods again, had been slashed 3 times. Deep, straight, cold. No one could explain why. I never went back to Glacier Point. But sometimes, when I heard the rain pounding on the roof, I would listen for anything else. And some nights, in the middle of the rain, I could swear I heard a thump, thump, thump somewhere in the wall. Slow, even, and exactly 3 times. I worked as a summer employee at a tourist campground in Oregon. They called it Pine Hollow Campground, nestled between two mountain ranges, surrounded by pine forests and lakes. In the summer of 2016, I worked the night shift, tending the tents, cleaning the communal kitchen, and doing security checks. I worked there for 3 months, and if it weren't for what happened at Tent 12, I would have thought it was the most peaceful time of my life. The campground had 24 tents set up for rent. Each tent was about 20-30 meters apart, covered with thick canvas, had a wooden frame, and small incandescent lights. During the day, the place was bustling with people. At night, everything was quiet, except for the sound of the lake gently lapping against the shore. I remember the evening smell of Pine Hollow, a mixture of wood smoke, barbecue, and pine. At first, I found it pleasant, but then, on some nights, when it was just me and dozens of empty tents, the smell became completely different, like something had burned a long time ago and was still steaming in the air. It all started in mid-July. That night, the camp was crowded. I worked until almost midnight. As I was cleaning the restroom, I heard the manager call over the walkie-talkie. "Tyler, check the east side. Tent 12 reflects the knocking." I turned on the light and walked out onto the narrow dirt road. Tent 12 was at the end of the row, close to the edge of the woods, slightly separated from the rest. Its porch light was blinking. As I approached, a middle-aged woman opened the curtain and whispered, "Sir, someone has been circling my tent all this time. I hear the knocking, steady." I looked around, only to see the dark forest. I asked, "Have you seen anyone?" She shook her head. "No, just heard the sound. 3 beats at a time, sometimes by the door, sometimes behind." I shined the light all around, no new footprints. I said a few reassuring words, then walked around. Nothing. When I returned, she was still standing there, looking out, her hand clutching the curtain. I nodded and said, "It might just be squirrels. But if I hear them again, just turn on the light and I'll be right there." She nodded and closed the curtain. I returned to the downtown area, thinking that was all. The next morning, the guest left early. The front desk said she had no complaints, leaving only a brief thank you. "The place is very nice, just a little noisy at night." I didn't think much more about it, until the next evening. Tent 12 had new guests, a young couple from Washington State. They rented for 2 nights. I helped them turn on the light, showed them the way to the communal kitchen, and then returned to duty. Around 1 a.m., I patrolled the row of tents, checking the porch lights. As I passed the east area, I saw Tent 12's light on, but didn't hear any voices or movement. I called softly, "Does anyone need help?" No one answered. I slowed down and heard a small tapping sound coming from inside the tent. 3 beats, slow, steady. I thought they were hanging something. But as I stood listening, I realized the sound wasn't coming from inside, but from outside the fabric, behind the tent. I walked around. No one. Dry ground, no footprints. Light wind, no branches close enough to touch. I stood there for a few seconds, then turned away. The next morning, Tent 12 was empty. The couple left in the night, without notice. They left behind 2 chairs, a coat, and an unsigned receipt. The manager called them, but the phone number on file did not exist. We discussed cleaning the tent. When we unzipped it, the inside was still neat, except for one detail that sent a chill down my spine. On the canvas floor, right at the head of the bed, there were 3 small, bold, circular, parallel taps. After that, Tent 12 was empty for a while. No one complained, but I noticed. Whoever stayed there, the first night did not sleep well, and the next morning, they asked to change tents. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. But then August came, the camp was less crowded, and Tent 12 was empty all the time. Until that night, a couple of older tourists arrived around 10 o'clock, saying they just needed a place to stay. The manager said they were all out of tents, but they insisted, so I gave them the key to 12. When I turned on the porch light, the man looked inside and asked, "Has anyone stayed here for a long time before?" I said, "Yes, but a long time ago. Why?" He smiled and said, "No, just asking. This tent smells like burnt wood." I was silent. I had thought so too, but no one believed me. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, I went to check the communal kitchen, then followed the row of tents. As I approached number 12, I saw the light inside flickering. I stopped. Then a knock sounded clear, steady, 3 beats from the back of the tent. Knock, knock, knock. I shined my light, calling, "Is everyone okay?" No answer. I circled around, the light scanning the dry ground. At that moment, I saw a short figure, standing about 5-6 meters away, with his back turned. I called, but the figure did not turn around. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, there was no one. I ran to the front of the tent, called again. The man came out, his face pale, and asked, "Did you see anyone standing outside?" I nodded. He looked out, his voice hoarse. "I heard someone knocking on the wall for several minutes before you arrived." Then he added very quietly, "It was as if the person wanted to remind me of something." The next morning, the two of them also left, without taking the money back, without saying anything more. The last week I worked there, tent 12 was closed. The manager told me to check the frame, maybe it was termite infested. I was told to clean up the old stuff, remove the light bulbs. When I walked in, the smell of damp and ash came back. Inside, the canvas floor had a black streak about 20 centimeters long, running from the corner of the tent to the middle. It looked like a burn, but it wasn't punctured. I bent down to look closely and saw at the beginning of the streak a small, flat stone with 3 parallel lines carved into it. I picked it up, about to throw it out, but then hesitated. The stone was cold, dry, and completely clean. I put it on the table and locked the tent. That night, I slept in the management area, and for the first time, I didn't hear the wind through the woods. I only heard a sound repeating in my head, as if from afar. Knock, knock, knock. I left Pine Hollow after that summer. The camp continued to operate for a few more years, then closed when the pandemic broke out. I heard they were building a new resort on the west side, leaving the old one abandoned. Last year, on a business trip, I drove past the road leading to it. The old sign was still there, the letters peeling off, leaning against the grass. I stopped, got out, and looked over the fence. Where the east side used to be, there were only a few fallen wooden frames. I looked closely and saw a small, rusted iron sign lying on its side, painted in faint white letters, 12. And right under that sign, among the pile of dry leaves, there was something reflecting the sunlight. A flat stone, engraved with 3 parallel lines. I didn't pick it up. I just stood there staring at it for a long time, until the sun went down and the wind picked up again, sounding like someone was tapping somewhere far away, steady, slow, and endless. I got in the car, closed the door, and swore I would never sleep in a tent again, especially one that had been occupied before.